It is time to torque some bolts. Now, the reason I'm doing this part 2 video is because I glossed over the torquing part on part 1, and so I'm going to fill in some details here based on what I've learned or what I think I've learned. But first, let me show you the front axle oil change. So they say to drain it out first, but before I did that, I pulled the fill plug just to take a peek down inside and see how full it is. I don't know if this is going to show up. You can kind of see the oil level down in there. That's really kind of hard, but it's like right around the middle of that that gear there. So that, you know, gives me an idea of exactly where it should be. So now let's get that thing drained out. That's a 14 mil socket. Oh, and there's problem number 1. My drain pan ain't gonna fit. All right, and then we'll get that old thread sealant off. And then I want to keep this thing weighed down so the fluid drains out. So I'll just put a couple of blocks on it till that baby drains out. All right, let's get this Teflon tape on. I always forget the method. So let's see, you guys screw it in that way. So that means you don't want the tape wrapped around that way. You want it wrapped around that way. No, you do want it wrapped around that way, so it goes with the threads. So that's what we'll do. There we go. So I just kind of cut the strip in half, long ways. We'll hold that there and wrap that baby around. There wasn't much on it when I took it off, so I'm not going to get too aggressive with the tape. There we go. So I've got it in there, and that should be good. We'll let her finish draining. Okay, that looks tight. We'll go to the other side. And out she comes. This is also 14 millimeter. You know, funny thing is, 14 mil is the only socket I don't have, which is crazy. So I actually had to get that. Oh, look, this has tape on it too. So I guess I'll have to examine. Huh, it doesn't say to rewrap in tape, but it clearly has tape on it, so I'm gonna have to put tape on those too. It's hard to see here, but there's like some thread sealant stuff down in there that didn't come out, so I'm just trying to get it out so it doesn't end up down inside there when I refill. Okay, I lifted the loader and that really helped, so let's get her filled up now. The manual says it takes I can't remember, I think it's like a gallon. I'm sure I had it in the last video. I know I'm gonna have plenty. Let's get her poured in there. Well, I started it up, drove it back and forward, and just kind of put the plugs, the air plugs in, and then I tried to refill it, and it's definitely full. I think I left the air plug. The air plugs are definitely needed. Because as soon as I tried to put some in, it overflowed. And it's not overfilled, it's just that there was no way for the air to escape. So we'll get that all dried off here. And that's something I think I'll check on, I don't know, here one of these days. I'll check on it, make sure it's still in good shape. Give it about half an hour of run time, take a look at it. So all I gotta do is get those plugs tightened up now. And then a quick aside here, I finally got this stump cut off this morning. It was just a couple little things holding it. This is a poplar, and it was 45, probably 6 inches in diameter at the widest point. So that thing was a bear to get off. You can see how jagged it was at the bottom from my plunge cuts. But I got it. Okay, back to the tractor. And then these bolt torque values on the loader are ridiculous. So I've got the gauge here. I've removed one bolt from the loader mount. You can see the hole right here. And it takes, and let me confirm, 18 mil socket. So if I take that, take the washer off, put that on my gauge, it's 10, no, 12. Goes into 12, and you can see it matches up with the lines. So it's a 12, it's an M12. So looking at the loader chart, since the bolt has an 8.8 on the front, that means this bolt should be 61 foot-pounds of torque. Great. The other side of the loader, every loader mount is this bolt. This side of the loader, there are two in the back that are 19 mil. They're labeled differently. And so I guess they're 97 pound-feet of torque. And they are bigger. You look around the other side, you can tell they're definitely bigger. Let me show you. Hopefully this comes through. So that says SFC 8.8, and that's an 18 mil socket. So that's the front four. But look back there in the back. These two say 8.8 at the top, and then there's just the letter C at the bottom of the bolt, and they are 19 mil. And then there's a bolt at the bottom. Let me get to that. Here we are at the bottom of the loader mount, and this bottom one here is back to the 18 mil. Now why is that? I have no idea, but that's how it is. Like I say, the other side is all the same bolt. But that's the torque values, and that's the way it's set up. So let's move back to the rear of the tractor. Then here we are in the rear. These are bolts that hold this metal frame on around the 3-point in the back hitch. And that's a 19 mil socket. And then these are the bolts that hold the frame, or mount the frame to the transmission. That's a 17 mil socket. Now I remember when I was researching the tractor, somebody said about how their transmission bolts came loose and stripped the threads, and that, it was a whole ordeal with the dealer. It was like a big mess. So I want to make sure those are tight, but how do I make sure they are tightened to the right spec? So I know it's a 17. So if the loader bolt, this bolt was an 18 mil and it was an M12, then this must be an M10 because it's 17 mil. And I kind of lined my little chart up the best I could, and I'm pretty sure it's right. So lining that up to the chart in not the loader manual, but in the user manual, which is the same as the manual out of the service manual, I guess the 4, and I'll show that on the screen here, the 4 on the bolt head means it's a 4T. So M10 4T would be 16 to 22 pound-feet of torque. Now on these bolts, I guess that's a 6. It looks like more like a 6 than a 9 to me. So I'm not really sure what 6 means, but if it's an M14, I've got either the 7T or the 4T in the manual. And so that means it's either 55 to 78 pound-feet or 123 to 147. So I'm going to assume it's not the 7T because that's a lot of torque. I mean, my torque wrench only goes up to 150. So we're going to say it's 55 to 78. That's what I'm going to shoot for here. Then as it turns out, I did decide to check the toe in. And I did it using the Dave Knows How method. That's an awesome channel on YouTube. Except that my clamps are actually in use right now. So I had to get my wife to hold the level. I just marked, actually I marked it, and I marked the level in one spot and another, and did the same thing on the other side. And we just measured, and we were a 1/4 inch off. And that's the spec. So we're going to leave that alone. So that's it for the toe in. This was really hard. Like the Dave knows how method is much better. You know, clamp a piece of metal on there. It's, you know, stable and, you know, no movement and stuff. We had to check our measurements a couple times to make sure we weren't messed up. I saw in another video someone took that cover off and lubed that spindle a little bit, so I just sprayed some fluid film inside of there. And then back to this belt tensioning thing, the whole calibrate my fingers to 5 pounds, I think it was too tight, so I ended up jamming a tape measure in there and measuring, you know, the flat state, and then I put this weight on top of this bar, so I guess it was actually a little more than 5 pounds, and I got like ½ an inch of deflection. So then I tightened it down. So I did end up redoing that. And other than that, that is all of the maintenance. Get these tires back on and we should be good to go. So just like the first one, if you have any questions, post them in the comments, and thanks for watching.